Well, man, it was a good weekend. Weather's warming up.
How did preaching go?
I loved it. I love teaching on the word worship. I love teaching on worship because I am so passionate about worship. I love worship. And I think God commands us to worship him through singing, through cheering, through lifting up our hands. And I just felt, as we talked about the importance of building blocks in our fundamentals of our Christian walk, that worship had to be taught yesterday in a way that people could understand how God feels about worship.
Mm-hmm. Here's a fun question.
So it was fun.
What did you learn in your preparation for this sermon?
I think the meaning behind why we raise our hands, I think I learned the most. Like, I was doing my studies and someone taught that the one universal hand raising that is known across the entire world, if someone put a gun to you or you were being arrested, instantly what do? You put your hands up. Surrender. Mm-hmm. And I never thought about it from that perspective.
Yeah.
And that sometimes in worship, we just surrender. Say, God, I surrender all. I just surrender all. But then that also leads to this position of I receive your grace. Mm-hmm. You know, and so I learned a lot about the importance of when we put our hand up and we testify. Mm-hmm. We need to do that in court. You know, I testify that this is the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Well, this is the truth about who God is. I testify that he is, so that was new to me, that perspective that I never really thought about. Now I raise my hand in honor of him, of saying you are my all, but to say that I am testifying before these people in this auditorium of who Jesus is in my life. So, yeah.
That's interesting. I've heard the surrender one before, but not the other two.
Yeah.
So that's really good.
Yeah, and then the last one was just cheering. So those things really were new to me, and I was excited to teach that.
Nice.
And then also what I loved about yesterday was challenging people to put into practice immediately after the sermon with a worship song of how can we step out of our comfort zone? I heard this years ago when I was in college. The way that we make our comfort zone grow is that we take a step out of it. Because once we take a step out of our comfort zone, that comfort zone expands. And if we want to expand our comfort zone, we've got to keep taking a step out of it. And that includes worship.
Wow.
For some of us, it may be, and I said this, you might sing for the first time today. When we worship, it might be the first time you sing and not worry about what you sound like. Because I talked about God wants us to make a joyful noise, not a beautiful noise, a joyful noise.
Why'd you point at me when you said not a beautiful noise?
Well, I don't know.
Because I can't sing.
I can't either. Why. And so, and so I think the challenge yesterday was great to say, okay, maybe you don't have to raise your hand the whole time, but maybe for the first time, you receive, you surrender, you testify. Maybe you close your eyes. But whatever it is, take a step out of your comfort zone because we can't become a worship church if we don't worship. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of I was so pumped up to preach that message. Cool. There's not been a lot of times
Allison
that
said you did a great job. She said she could tell you were passionate about the subject.
And I told the camera guys, I'm going to go crazy on stage. I'm just going to go, but I didn't. But I gave them the heads up. I go, I'm really passionate, guys, about this.
Well, there's our connection.
Just be ready.
Out of your comfort zone. That's what we talked about today.
Yeah, that's right. Out of our comfort zone. You're going to hear a good talk today.
In the worship, but stepping out of my comfort zone of what's next step for my family.
Yeah. So I think you're gonna like today. You're gonna hear maybe for the first time Nick's story of the next chapter in his life. For some of you already know it. You're gonna kind of hear the details behind how he came to that decision with his wife and over that season. So I hope you enjoy it. We should also do a podcast on March Madness. Give them our picks when they come out. When before your Hey, speaking of your farewell, this was let's talk transition. I think that's a good thing to talk about today.
Yeah. I think
You're
it's a decent
leaving.
one. I'm leaving.
Ladies
I'm
and
out.
gentlemen, I just want to let you know that the days of the Tim and Nick show are slowly coming to an end.
All good things need to come to an end.
No, they don't.
Except for our faith in Jesus.
yeah.
That goes on forever.
Jesus juke.
Can't catch me.
So,
'cause I
Nick-
just Jesus juked.
A couple years ago, God put something on your heart and planted a seed. And over the course of those 2 years and conversations with people in your life and experiences that you've encountered as a chaplain in law enforcement kind of led to a decision, I think way back, maybe 5 months ago, 6 months ago, where you pulled the trigger to do something that has kind of changed the course of your life. Why don't you share a little bit about how that all came to fruition?
Well, man, it's actually a long story. Not a long story like to tell, but
Do I need background music?
no. We already have the beeping. If y'all can hear that beeping,
Yeah, sorry about that.
our worship center's under construction. But man, it probably, now it's about 3.5 years ago. Allison and I, we started feeling, the only way I can explain it is restlessness. And the interesting about this restlessness that we felt kind of deep in our hearts was not dissatisfaction. Because the toughest part of our restlessness was the fact that we truly do believe that, and this is my opinion, Community Bible Church is the best church on earth. We love this place. We love the staff. I love working under Richie's leadership, now your leadership. Love Ed to death. He's my number one mentor. So we're trying to really figure out this restlessness. We're like, why do we feel like there's something more to go do, but we're very satisfied here? And so we start looking into it. And then Colonel Dylan Patterson, he was the commander of the 188th here in Fort Smith. At the time, he was a really involved church member as well. He comes to me and he says, Nick, have you ever considered military chaplaincy? And I said, I didn't even know that was a thing. And we started looking into it, and it seemed really cool. But then at the time, this was about 2.5 years ago. At the time, we're sitting there, and we're kind of like, man, that would be an exciting life. But I don't want to get deployed. Don't want to miss out on 6 months of my kid's life. Don't want to, have to leave home, because at the time, like I said, we loved Fort Smith. We love Community Bible. We love all that. So we kind of put a pin in it. We were like, no, not going to do it.
Yeah.
And then we go about 1.5 years.
So when you use that pin, is that kind of the military term for a grenade, and putting a pin back in it? You kind of use it.
I never really thought about that. I actually thought of it more of like a pin it up on the bulletin board.
Like, we're going to let it happen. It's going to explode right in front of us, and you put the pin in and said, nope, not today.
Yeah. So anyway, boom. Anyway, it did explode. Now we're dealing with the explosion.
That's right.
No, but we decide not to, and we go for about 1.5 years, and then our sabbatical comes up, which is after 7 years on staff at Community Bible, you get a sabbatical, a month-long sabbatical, and we went out west, and leading up to our sabbatical, restlessness never went away. We're facing burnout kind of at the same time there, and just needed to get away and get some rest, and go to sabbatical, and we feel God was very clear. Community Bible, you're going to be there at least 1 more year. And so we come back from sabbatical, we're on fire, we're going to do whatever we need to serve the best that we can where we're at. And then we still don't know what that is. We just know, hey, give it a year. And that next...
Hey, stop for a minute. Let's unpackage that for a moment. What do you think it was? Was it a conversation with someone? You said feelings. You just felt like you and Allison felt something. Was it what confirmed those feelings? What were the things that said, yeah, I think we need to go this direction?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We made, going into sabbatical, Allison and I were facing that restlessness. Naturally, in ministry, it's a people. I say people business. It's people, right? So there's some of the most rewarding things about ministry with people, but there's some of the most difficult things with people. right? And so we're in the midst of just coming out of the summer, going into the new school year, walking through heavy stuff with people, which is rewarding, and then dealing with some of kind of the surface level frustrations that come with ministry and people. And we were kind of jaded going into that. So we were like, I can't make any decisions in an emotional state, right? So let's retreat, let's focus in and see what God tells us. So what we did is we went to Creede, Colorado, and we rented a cabin for 9 days while we were out there, out in the middle of Rio Grande National Forest in the San Juan Mountains, no cell signal. Man, it was perfect. The trout you're hitting trout every cast. It was amazing. And every morning, Allison and I would wake up, we would pray, we would read scripture, and we didn't talk about it until the end of it. We said, go through this, I'll go through this. And then our last day in Colorado before we head out further west, we sit down and go, what do you feel God's telling you? And we both actually had. We said, we got to be at community another year. And then we can figure out. I mean, we both knew we were restless. We both knew we kind of figure out what's next. But just through that kind of confirmation that we were both feeling the same thing was kind of enough for us. Like, yeah, that's the Spirit.
Nick, I'm always blown away when I hear stories where couples spend time separately in God's Word or in prayer, in quiet meditation, whatever it is. They do it separately, and I've heard this so many years over the course of my ministry years. We came back with the same answer, and it always blows me away because sometimes I think, come on, you already knew the answer, but then after you hear it, couple after couple, and now here you and I are sitting and you're sharing very similar story of going away and praying, having your time alone with God and coming back with confirmation. I love that about marriage, that couples can just spend time away and how God unites their spirits together with the one purpose of here's where we're going. I love that. I love that.
It's fascinating too. And it was, I think someone wiser than me is the one who encouraged me to do that with big decisions, because the reality is there's no closer relationship than the marriage relationship. But the reality is we're both still emotional beings, right? So coming into it, we can get emotional, we can get frustrated, we can get, and we can let each other influence decisions or thoughts or, what our motivations are. So when you have the ability to just take a step back and kind of pursue it and then come together, even if we came back with different answers, we would have worked through it and figured it out. But when we had the same answer, it was like...
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
But mind you, in this moment, chaplaincy, we said no already. Yeah. Like, we're not going to do that. So we still know, hey, community Bible's another year, but we don't know what that's going to look like. So then we kind of start this journey of, okay, what does that need to look like? And like I said, we looked at the idea of going to other churches. We looked at, and I'm just like, I don't want to deal with having to restart at a whole new church.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, the same stuff that's getting us a little burnt out, it's not like a new church doesn't have those things. It's just the work. I mean, that's the work of ministry.
Right.
The military is going to have that too,
different level. But
so we kind of go back into figuring out what that is, and then throughout the next year, just this chaplaincy thing just keeps coming up, not from Colonel Patterson, but from different people in different places. And then my buddy Tyler Nelson, he's a state trooper. He reaches out to me. This would have been around March of last year, and says, that's probably February. I think I heard in March, but he says, hey, they're starting a chaplaincy program again with the Arkansas State Police, and if you're interested, I'd like to put your name in. I think you'd do a great job. And of course, I'm like, absolutely. Like, get to minister to these state troopers, but also in between get to chase bad guys and do things that are living life on the edge. Right? Sounds like a blast. So I get into it and put my name in and get accepted, go through orientation, all these different things. And I fall in love with it. it is the rawest form of ministry I've ever gotten to do. And you understand this. You've been a chaplain before as well. It's like get to all the deep parts of ministry with chopping out the programming side of things, not having to worry about prepping everything and getting all these things and all the administrational. You're literally just doing life with people in stressful situations.
In the moment.
Yeah.
It's in the moment ministry. It's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. So then start looking into that. Still not planning on doing anything different doing into chaplaincy. And then Dr. Roy Rhodes comes in. And Richie Fisher, mind you, I should rewind and say Richie knew from the very beginning that this stirring was happening. Okay. That says a lot about his leadership, that I can talk to him about that. Some places you get canned pretty quickly if
you're not on board with us, you're not on board.
So Richie's been through the whole journey with me, but he gets back from the War College from Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama. And he says, hey, I met one of the lead chaplains there. I have his number if you're interested in it. And I'm like, yeah, not really interested. Dr. Roy Rhodes happened to be in that same room making a cup of coffee. And he doesn't say anything, but he goes back to his office. I originally didn't even have an appointment to sit down with him, but Richie comes up to me and says, hey, he has an opening and I want you to go sit down with him. So I'm like, okay.
So hey, just real quick, Dr. Roy Rhodes, which is one of my best friends in the world. He's a 82-year-old psychologist who studies really individual assessments of how God has wired us and uses the Myers-Briggs, the extrovert, the thinker, the feeler terminology to really unpackage who you are. So he's here for, really a workshop at the time, and he's working with our staff. And so go ahead.
So I go and I sit down with Dr. Roy Rhodes, and he asks me some questions, and I just share with him. I'm like, man, we've been going through this journey of restlessness, everything Richie knew, everything, just trying to figure out what's next. And he says, Dr. Roy Rhodes says, I think you should consider military chaplaincy. And I'm like, this just won't go away. And so he says the same thing in his appointment with Allison. And we go home, and it was actually that night, we go, let's do it. Let's pull the trigger. There's high standards to get in the military. There's a lot that you need to do to be a military chaplain. I said, if God's going to close the door, he'll close the door. This isn't it. And I said, even besides that, and this one's pretty crazy, I said, there's 2 medical conditions I have that they'll reject me to be in the military. One was a red meat allergy. The other one was childhood. I had asthma as a child. We'll never confirm that I didn't have asthma anymore. So we start going through the process. We get my endorsement to go into the military through an organization called In Faith. That goes through. I get accepted through the endorsement agency. We then tell our family, hey, we're going through this process. I start being proactive with some medical stuff. Go and take a pulmonary function test to see how bad my asthma is. Comes back green. No evidence of asthmatic activity in my breathing. And then I'm like, okay, but I've been allergic to red meat for 4 years. Go, get blood work done, take a challenge. Red meat allergy's gone. And I'm just like, you can either say it's a miracle, God had a plan for it, or you can say that science just ran its course or whatever. I mean, you can argue that all day long, but I just took that as like, this door.
Yeah.
I'm trying every opportunity to get this thing shut, and it's staying wide open.
I'm going to lean on the God thing. That's what I'm going to lean.
That's where I'm going to lean
I'm going to lean there.
And so then comes to MEPS in November, which is the Military Entrance Processing Station, which is all your medical exams, your background checks, things like that. Everything ran pretty smoothly, and then got through MEPS, had to get some waivers for those 2 medical things to prove that I was good. And that took 10 weeks, and I finally got the thumbs up. After that, I had one more interview with the whole board of chaplains at the United States Air Force, and that went incredibly well. They gave me the thumbs up. I signed the paper 2 Thursdays ago, and got my orders last week that I will be going off to officer training school at Maxwell Air Force Base, Montgomery, Alabama, March 25th. That'll be 2 months of training, and then our new permanent station for the next 3 years is Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama.
And I just want to make certain all of you listeners know that if Nick ever sides with Alabama football, anything that says Roll Tide, that we will disown him forever. You can't. Don't even let that come off your tongue. Nothing that says roll anything rolls off those.
Can I sing the song?
No, dude. We want to end this thing strong,
What was
bro.
it?
Come on. I have no idea.
The song they sing at the Alabama
I have
games.
no idea. And I don't care. But anyway, I've been a part of the journey for a year. I came on a year ago and on staff. And so I knew you had just started with chaplaincy. You had called me and asked me questions. I spent 15 years in chaplaincy with different agencies across the country. But just the process itself that you went through and the patience of not knowing and anticipating, and it really was a testament to your relationship with God, where you just said, God, here, I don't know what this is going to be, but I'm going to trust you with it. You didn't argue against the stirring. You didn't argue against the leanings, the leadings, the voices from other people. You leaned into God and said, God, this keeps coming up. And each step of the way through your faith, you allowed God to do what God does in his sovereignty. And this has been a plan of his all along. And that's very evident to the process. And even how Allison has accepted it and knowing that the change is an exciting change. Change is hard, but change is also exciting because
there's times I feel like she's more excited than I am.
Well, and the thing about it is you get to throw your hat into the ring of faith. You just say, God, here it is, man. We're on board. I remember just real quick story. I got a phone call when I was a chaplain, and it was a guy who said, my name's so-and-so, and you've been recommended as a chaplain with the FBI. And I went, okay, who? This is a joke.
Yeah.
I really thought it was maybe one of the officers doing a joke on me. And he said, you've been recommended. Would you come in? So they gave me the address, and I said, all right, I'll go. And I went down to this building and began the process. This building that does not stand out, that's very unassuming, that obviously is very highly protected. Went down, had an interview, and began the process of becoming an FBI chaplain. Here's what they did different than the military. The FBI walked my neighborhood, not telling me, knocking on doors of my neighbors to find out about me. They flew to different states to visit my friends who they knew I was associated with. They contacted all the agencies.
Is Tim Homa a foreign national?
They checked in on every country I'd ever gone to with the organizations. Crazy. Thorough, man. I felt a little violated by the FBI when it was all said and done.
I'm glad you passed.
Me too. Man, it was crazy. But yeah,
that guy stole a nickel from someone one time.
You're out.
Sorry,
that poor little kid. So, but
man, it's been a cool journey. And one thing I haven't talked about much, which I just kind of thought of coming out of high school, I was days away from signing up to enlist in the military. I was actually going to go Navy at the time. And I said, this is the same time I was working as an intern at our youth group at the time. Felt called to ministry. And ended up deciding, you know what? I'm going to go the ministry route. And I backed out of enlisting. So I've always had this dream of being in the military ever since I was young.
Now you're going in as an officer. How about that?
Now I get to go in as an officer. I get to do ministry, and I get to be in the military. I'm like, wow, God.
And people will salute you.
Yeah. I might say. I actually joked around. I tell some of the guys here that are in the National Guard, Air National Guard, I said, I'm going to figure out when y'all are at drill so I can come back just so you have to salute me when I walk around.
Oh, so glad you're taking a humble approach to this there, Nick.
Yeah. No, that's only for the close friends.
I know. Hey, man, I tell you, it's a bittersweet for me because, number one, we've really connected as friends over the last year, and we've been able to do life in such a short season, but it's been so much of a blessing. My wife talks about all the time that I had a really close friend, younger guy that I worked with in Texas, and him and I, we did everything together. And my wife said, Nick's been that guy for you in just a short season, and just exploring the world of podcasts with you has been so much fun. And I will be interviewing future co-host, because to be able to replace a Nick Kerouac is going to take a lot of time and effort, but we're going to do it, and it's going to be awesome. But in the meantime, we've got a few more weeks with it, and we're gonna finish strong, and we get to do it together. But I've loved it, and I love the story. I think it'll be a story that I will reference in sermons in the future of taking steps of faith when you don't know what's on the other side of the answer, and you've lived it and been faithful, and God's been faithful back as He always is. It's been cool.
It's been the hardest thing in my life.
Yeah, but man, what a journey.
It's been the honor of my life to serve here at Community Bible the last 10 years.
Yeah. And so you will leave a legacy here, which is what you want to do, a positive legacy, and the people that you have poured into, led strongly, continue to carry the torch of kids ministry here. What you've done in media will continue to leave a legacy here for the future. So, man, you're leaving well. And that's how you want to leave church. You want to leave well. You want to leave strong. You want to leave it better than when you first got it, and you're going to do that. So good job, man.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. We will
see you next week.
See you next week.
Thank you for listening to the 61st Minute Podcast by Community Bible. Our goal is to release a new podcast every Wednesday reviewing what we discussed during our hour gathering the previous Sunday morning at Community Bible Church. If you don't have a church home, we would love for you to join us on Sundays at 9 o'clock or 10:30 a.m. live at any of our 4 campuses. Also, you can watch online or review Sunday morning sermon at communitychurch.com/messages. Again, that's communitychurch.com/messages. Tune in for next week's episode of the 61st Minute Podcast by Community Bible on main platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you listen to your podcasts.